Hey everyone. Before we begin with this video, I want to apologize for not being so active with new videos lately. I have just transferred to a new university, my sister recently got COVID, and things have been hectic lately. Also, I've heard from some of you guys that you're using my videos to learn English, which I think is absolutely fantastic. These are 3 supposedly true stories that took place during or at the movies, a topic that I haven't done in 3 years. Anyway, I hope you all understand my situation, and I'll try to be more consistent. That being said, let's get in with the video. My name is David, and I've been a janitor at my local movie theater for about 3 years now. It's certainly not the best job I've had, but definitely not the worst. Because of the pandemic, business was slow, and with the theater being located in a small town, it definitely didn't help matters. Omicron was rampant at this point in time, and our boss was tightening restrictions on the health and safety of our customers. Being the janitor, I was required to wipe down all the tables and chairs, which is something I didn't mind. Safety was important, and with me living with my 83-year-old grandpa, I wasn't gonna get him sick. Most of the time, I'd work the night shifts and oftentimes be the only janitor working since it was such a small theater. I've worked several shifts and never really had anything abnormal happen. There was this one night, however, where I encountered something that I'll never forget. One night, I had been working the night shift cleaning up a theater after a showing of the new Spider-Man movie. Because of that movie, the theater was pretty packed, which meant that I had a lot of cleaning up to do. Thankfully, that was the last showing before closing time, so I got the broom and started sweeping the floors. Popcorn and trash had been spilled everywhere among the aisles, making it into a pigsty. As much trash as there was, I then noticed something in the corner of the theater in one of the seats. The lights were on, and I immediately identified it as someone in a hoodie. They were sitting on the top row with their head looking down, making it harder for me to see them. I figured it was probably someone who fell asleep during the movie, as this happens more often than people think. I politely call out to them, making my presence known, telling them that we were closing and that they had to leave. I got no response, as they just sat there not moving a muscle. This was kind of funny, as my voice is very loud, so I was surprised as to why they couldn't hear me. At one point, I thought of just leaving and getting security. In retrospect, I should have gone ahead with that plan at the very least. However, my curiosity got the better of me, and I put down my broom and walked up to the steps to the last row of the theater. I go over to the person sitting in the chair, and that's when I notice a dark liquid on the floor. I assume somebody had spilled their soda, but the lights are much more dim the more you go up, so I couldn't identify as to what it was. I simply tapped their shoulder and told them that we were closed and that they had to leave. The very second I tapped them, the person sitting in the chair then falls forward, landing on their back. At that point, I could see the person's face as I stared down at his lifeless body. His mouth was hung open and his face was pale and looked like he'd been dead for, at most, an hour or 2. I wasn't sure as to how he died, but I could see open wounds all over his body. I felt my whole world shrivel up and die as I realized what I was seeing and ran out of the theater screaming my lungs out. Thankfully, one of my coworkers who was turning off the lights in the snack stand saw me and confronted me. I tell him what I had just seen, and he instantly realizes the shock I was in. Him and I both call the police, and they arrive in 2 minutes as the police department was a block away. They go in, and one of the 3 police officers begins to question me. Eventually, paramedics and even an investigator arrive at the scene, and the whole theater turned into a crime scene. We were sent home, and the theater was closed until further notice. I still get paid, but this is probably the most scariest experience I've ever had. I don't know who killed him or how he actually died. This town has one of the lowest crime rates in the country, and stuff like this never happens around here. What was once a peaceful and quiet little community turned into something absolutely horrifying. It's been a couple months, but I have moved past it. This may not be the scariest or most action-packed story ever, but this is seriously one of the most creepiest encounters my friends and I ever had. So, my friends and I had just finished seeing the new Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Revenant, a film he deserves an Oscar for, I'd like to add. It was me, my best friend Gabriel, my other friend David, and his girlfriend Kate. Anyway, once the movie had finished, my friends and I noticed that another movie we wanted to see had been playing in another theater. It was 5 minutes before the next showing, and we all kind of looked at each other knowing we had to do it. At the time, we knew it was considered illegal to sneak into another movie, but knowing this theater, the employees really didn't care. Long story short, we sneak in without being caught and find a few empty seats in the middle. There's about 50 other people in the theater, and we take our seats when I notice a kid with brown hair sitting alone in the seat next to us. I didn't think much of it, but throughout the movie he seemed to be staring at me several times no matter how many times I tried avoiding eye contact with him. At the time, I was wearing a really cool hat and figured that was the reason why he was staring at me. Anyway, the movie we had been watching finally ended, and my friends and I left the theater talking about what we liked best. As we're leaving the theater, I feel a slight tug on my shirt and look to see that it was the little boy. His face was pale and his eyes were wild, looking up at me, giving me this extremely creepy smile. At this point, my friends and I are confused, and Kate begins to ask him if he was lost. He's completely oblivious to Kate's question and continues to stare at me. Not knowing what to do, I ask him, can I help you, bud? What he said next is something that made our skin crawl, and I still have no explanation as to how this happened. That's okay, sir. I just wanted to let you know that your mom will soon suffer from great pain. With that, he walked away out into the parking lot, disappearing into the night, and we never saw him again. We all just look at each other and think nothing of it, but just some kid wanting attention. 2 days go by, and I'm driving home from school when I get a call from my dad. I answer the phone, and he's crying on the other end while repeatedly saying that mom is dead. I felt as if 1,000 pounds fell on top of me as I cried my eyes out, telling Dad that he better not be lying. I get home, and there he was, crying on the living room floor with my mom. Apparently, she had a massive heart attack, and my dad couldn't save her as my dad is a paramedic. However, He felt as if he failed himself by not saving the love of his life in time. Needless to say, I was depressed for well over a month before I slowly got past it. I don't know if this was linked to the kid at the movies warning me of my mother, but I don't want to know. I live with my dad now, and I never speak of this to anyone. When I was about 24, I worked the night shift at a local drive-in theater in Iowa City, Iowa. It's a very long and boring shift, but most nights are calm and quiet, and I got to use my phone every now and then. The drive-in theater was located at the entrance of a huge national park to, I guess, make the scenery more interesting. One night, I had been on the job by myself in this little shack with just a computer and a chair and was bored out of my mind. With nothing to do, I decided to go outside for a walk to get some fresh air as the winter months were coming and the shack didn't have any AC. I start taking a stroll around the theater when I hear the payphone from a few feet away start ringing. This was odd, as the payphone never rings unless it was an emergency, so I could only assume it was bad news. I go over to the phone and answer it, only to hear nothing but silence on the other end. I put the phone back, and not even 10 seconds later, it rings again. When I pick it up this time, there was a voice on the other end. It was my mom's voice, saying my name with this distorted voice. I kept yelling Mom into the phone before the call hung up again. The only weird part was that my mom had died a year after I was born.